The first mistake Nellie Wren made was wrapping a motionless giant wolf in her only winter blanket. The second was telling him he could leave when he got better, as if the creature under her roof had ever belonged to the forest at all. The rain had stopped just before dawn, leaving Mistbrook Village silver and wet beneath a pale autumn sky. Water dripped from the pine branches in slow, patient drops. The creek behind Nellie's cottage rushed over dark stones, carrying the smell of mud, moss, and fallen leaves. Smoke curled from crooked chimneys in the distance, and somewhere a rooster screamed as though sunrise had offended him personally. At 24, Nellie had become very good at laughing before anyone else could laugh first, which was useful, because her morning had already collapsed into mud. She stood beside the creek with both hands on her hips, staring down at a basket of freshly washed blankets that had tipped over at her feet. "Oh, wonderful," she murmured. "Perfect. Very professional." A strip of white linen floated sadly in a puddle near her boot. From the lane above, Mrs. Bellamy called, "Nellie, did you fall again?" "No," Nellie answered too quickly. A pause. "Did the laundry fall?" Nellie looked at the mud-covered blankets, then closed her eyes. Emotionally, yes. Mrs. Bellamy laughed and continued down the road. Nellie's cheeks warmed, but she smiled anyway. People in Mistbrook did not mean to be cruel, not always. Still, pity could bruise when it came wrapped in kindness. To them, she was sweet Nellie Wren, the clumsy Omega who tripped over buckets, dropped cups, and apologized to furniture after bumping into it. She knelt to gather the ruined blankets, her fingers cold from the wet cloth. The air smelled of clean cotton, chamomile tea from her sleeve, and ripe pears from the pie cooling on her windowsill. It was a soft, homely scent, the kind no powerful wolf would ever be expected to notice. Then she heard the breathing. Faint, low, almost swallowed by the creek. Nellie went still. The sound came from beneath the old willow, where grass bent low over the bank. She stepped carefully through the mud, slipped once, caught herself on a branch, and whispered, "Nobody saw that. Excellent." Then she saw him. A wolf lay half-hidden beneath the willow. No, not a wolf. A giant. His black fur was soaked through, tangled with burrs and leaves. One massive paw rested in the mud, claws dark against the stones. He was larger than any creature Nellie had ever seen. His body stretched so long that, for one foolish second, she wondered if the forest had grown a shadow and forgotten to pull it back. Every sensible instinct told her to run. Unfortunately, Nellie's kindness had never been sensible. "Oh, you poor thing," she breathed. One silver eye opened. Nellie froze. That eye was not wild. It was sharp, tired, and terribly aware. It looked at her as if it understood her voice, her fear, and the unfortunate fact that one side of her face was covered in mud. She swallowed. "Please don't eat me. I'm mostly elbows and regret." The wolf did not move. His breathing trembled. Concern pushed fear aside. Nellie hurried back to the basket, grabbed her thickest winter blanket, and returned before common sense could catch up. The blanket was old, patched twice at the corners, and smelled strongly of chamomile, pear, clean cotton, and wood smoke. The moment she laid it over him, the wolf inhaled. Deeply. His enormous body shuddered once. At the same instant, a sharp ache pulled beneath Nellie's own ribs. She gasped and pressed a hand to her chest. The pain vanished. She stared at him, confused. Well, that was rude. The wolf's silver eye remained fixed on her. Nellie forced a small smile. There, see? Not terrible. Something beneath his soaked black fur eased. Not enough to heal him. Not enough to wake the strength buried in his bones. But enough that the terrible cold inside him loosened for the first time in days. Her scent wrapped around him like firelight. Warm. Safe. Impossible. Nellie, of course, noticed none of that. She was too busy trying to drag him onto an old wooden laundry cart. "You are either a wolf," she panted, pulling with all her strength, "or a small mountain with opinions." One black ear twitched. "Do not judge me. You are very heavy." By the time she reached her cottage, her boots were ruined, her dress was muddy, and the giant wolf had been bumped against 3 stones, 1 tree root, and her front step. Each time, Nellie gasped, "Sorry, sorry, I am so sorry." Inside, firelight filled the little room with gold. Nellie pulled him close to the hearth, tucked the blanket around his broad shoulders, then sank onto the floor beside him, exhausted. "You can go home when you're better," she whispered sleepily. The wolf opened his silver eyes. Outside, the village bells began to ring in alarm. Somewhere beyond the cottage, men were shouting that the Alpha King was missing, and beside Nellie's fire, the motionless giant wolf slowly rested his head on the edge of her blanket, already certain of one dangerous thing. He was not leaving without her. By morning, Nellie Wren had learned 3 important things. First, a giant wolf took up more space than a dining table. Second, wet wolf fur smelled like rain, pine, and wounded pride. Third, the creature she had rescued did not like being called, poor baby. You are making that face again, Nellie said. The wolf lay beside the fireplace, wrapped in her patched winter blanket like a disgruntled nobleman forced to attend a village picnic. Sunlight slipped through the small cottage windows, turning the wooden floor honey gold. Outside, Mistbrook was waking beneath a soft veil of mist. Inside, the air smelled of chamomile tea, warm pear pie, clean cotton, and the faint sharpness of the herbs Nellie had crushed for his wound. The wolf stared at her. Nellie lifted both hands. I am only saying you looked very tragic last night. One black ear twitched. Fine, not tragic, majestic and unconscious. The ear lowered again. Nellie smiled before she could stop herself. There was something almost human in his silence, as if every blink carried an opinion. It should have frightened her. Instead, it made the cottage feel less lonely. She knelt beside him with a bowl of warm water and a folded cloth. Her knees bumped the edge of the hearth, and she winced. I meant to do that, she whispered. The wolf's silver eyes narrowed. You did not hear anything. Hidden beneath black fur, King Alden Ravenscar watched the Omega with a level of disbelief usually reserved for failed council meetings. She had dragged him through mud, apologized to tree roots, wrapped him like laundry, and now appeared determined to nurse him back to health with tea, soft hands, and alarming confidence. He should have left. He could not. The moonbane still burned in his blood, but every time Nellie came near, her scent eased the fire beneath his skin. Warm pear, chamomile, cotton warmed beside a hearth. It sank into his lungs and quieted the savage edge of his wolf. Nellie dipped the cloth into the water. This may sting. Alden braced himself. She touched the wound near his shoulder. Pain flashed through him, sharp and silver. A low growl rumbled from his chest before he could stop it. Nellie froze. Then, very gently, she placed one hand on the side of his neck. I know. You are allowed to be grumpy. The growl faded. Her hand was small against him, warm, careful, not afraid enough to leave. That troubled him more than the poison. Nellie cleaned the torn flesh as best she could, murmuring nonsense the entire time. She told him about Mrs. Bellamy's rooster, who hated everyone except bread crusts. She told him about the time she dropped a basket of apples and accidentally started what the village children still called the Great Rolling Disaster. She told him that if he planned to stay another day, he needed a name. The wolf went very still. Nellie leaned back, studying him seriously. You cannot just be enormous injured wolf forever. He stared. Too formal, she agreed. His eyes sharpened. She tapped her chin. Midnight? No reaction. Lord Fluffy? His entire body stiffened. Nellie gasped. Absolutely not. I see that now. Alden silently thanked every ancient god. Her gaze drifted to the burrs still tangled in the edge of his fur. A smile slowly bloomed across her face. Oh, she said. Bramble. The Alpha King of the Northern Territories stopped breathing. Nellie brightened. Yes, that suits you. You were found under a bush, you were covered in thorns, and you look personally offended by kindness. Bramble. He had been called, Your Majesty, Crown Alpha, Stormwolf, and King Ravenscar. Now he was Bramble. Nellie clapped softly. See? Perfect. The wolf turned his head away with immense dignity. She laughed, and the sound filled the cottage like sunlight slipping under a door. Against his will, Alden felt his wolf settle. Then bells rang again in the village. Nellie's smile faded. She stood and looked through the window. Men were gathering near the notice board. A royal banner hung crookedly in the morning wind. Her eyes moved across the distant words. The Alpha King is missing. Behind her, the giant black wolf lifted his head. And for the first time, Nellie noticed how fiercely his silver eyes watched the crown's banner. By noon, Nellie Wren had discovered that hiding a giant wolf inside a cottage was much harder than rescuing one. Mostly because Bramble had opinions. No, she whispered, standing in front of the sitting room window with both arms spread wide. You cannot stare at people through the curtains. The black wolf stood behind a thin yellow curtain that covered exactly one eye, half of his nose, and none of his enormous body. Outside, Mrs. Bellamy paused on the lane with a basket of bread in her arms. Nellie smiled too brightly and waved. Mrs. Bellamy slowly waved back. Behind the curtain, Bramble's silver eye remained fixed on the road. Nellie turned and whispered, "This is not hiding, this is haunting." The wolf blinked once. She sighed. "Do not look proud of that." Sunlight warmed the little cottage in soft stripes of gold. The fire had burned low, leaving behind a gentle smell of cedar smoke and herbs. On the table sat a half-mended blanket, 2 chipped teacups, and 1 bowl of soup that Bramble had refused, with the solemn dignity of a king rejecting a bad treaty. Nellie pointed at the bowl again. "You need strength." Bramble looked at it. "It has carrots." His expression did not change. "And barley." Still nothing. Nellie narrowed her eyes. "You ate a corner of my pear pie this morning." One ear twitched. "I saw the crumbs on your nose." The Alpha King of the Northern Territories looked away. Nellie gasped softly. "You did eat it." Hidden beneath black fur, Alden Ravenscar endured the accusation in silence. The pie had been warm. The cottage had smelled like sugar, pear, and home. In his weakened state, he had made a strategic error. A delicious one. He had ruled armies with less internal conflict. Nellie laughed under her breath and returned to the table. The sound settled over him in a way no royal music ever had. Around him, everything in the cottage was small and imperfect. The chair near the hearth had 1 shorter leg. The curtains were uneven. The rug had a faded burn mark shaped vaguely like a rabbit. Nothing matched. Everything felt alive. In the palace, every corridor had echoed. Every room had watched him like a duty waiting to be fulfilled. Here, a clumsy Omega hummed while sewing crooked stitches and scolded him for stealing dessert. Alden should have found it ridiculous. Instead, he found himself breathing easier. A knock struck the door. Nellie jumped, pricked her finger with the needle, and whispered, "Oh no." Bramble rose at once. "No," she said quickly, pointing at him. "You stay." Quietly, very quietly. The knock came again. Nellie rushed to the door, then looked back in panic. Bramble was too large for the kitchen, too dark for the shadows, and far too royal-looking for a laundry basket. "Behind the curtain," she hissed. The wolf gave her a flat look. "Fine. Under the table?" He looked at the table. The table looked back, clearly too small for this responsibility. Nellie pressed a hand to her forehead. "Why are you shaped like a thunderstorm?" With no better idea, she dragged the yellow curtain wider. Bramble stepped behind it, leaving both ears visible above the rod. Nellie opened the door. Garrick Vale stood outside, broad-shouldered and smug, with reins still clinging to his dark coat. He was the kind of alpha who entered rooms as if expecting the furniture to apologize first. "Nellie," he said, glancing past her. "People are saying you brought something dangerous home." Nellie smiled nervously. "People also say Mrs. Bellamy's rooster understands taxes." Garrick frowned. "Do you have a wolf in there?" Behind her, the curtain sneezed. Nellie closed her eyes. Garrick leaned to look inside. "What was that?" "My kettle." "Your kettle sneezed?" "It has been a difficult morning." Garrick's gaze sharpened. "You should not be handling things beyond you, little Omega." The warmth left Nellie's face. Before she could answer, a low growl rolled through the cottage. It was not loud. It did not need to be. The curtain shifted, and 1 silver eye appeared from the yellow fabric like moonlight through a storm cloud. Garrick stepped back. Nellie felt Bramble move behind her, huge and silent, placing himself between her and the doorway. Her heart trembled. Not from fear, from the strange realization that something powerful had chosen to stand with her. Garrick swallowed. "That is no normal wolf." Bramble's gaze burned colder. Nellie lifted her chin, though her voice stayed soft. "He is healing, and he is not yours to threaten." For a moment, even the rain outside seemed to hold still. Then Garrick's eyes dropped to Bramble's chest, where the blanket had slipped just enough to reveal a faint white mark in the black fur. A mark shaped almost like a crown. Garrick's face changed. Nellie saw it. So did Alden. The alpha quickly stepped back from the door. "You should be careful, Nellie." Then he left without another word. Nellie shut the door and slowly turned around. Bramble sat beside the hearth, calm as stone, the royal mark hidden once more beneath her patched blanket. On the floor near his paw, something silver glinted. A broken arrowhead, and carved into it was a symbol Nellie had only seen in old warning books. A black thorn wrapped around a crown. That night, Nellie Wren learned that caring for a giant wolf involved far more blankets than anyone had properly warned her about. Bramble had started shivering after sunset. At first, Nellie thought he was cold. The rain had returned, tapping softly against the cottage roof while wind moved through the pine trees like tired whispers. She added more wood to the fire, tucked the patched blanket higher around his shoulders, and placed her warmest shawl over his back. "There," she said, kneeling beside him. "You now own most of my house." The wolf did not react. That worried her. Usually, Bramble reacted to everything. He reacted to soup with judgment. He reacted to the broom with suspicion. He reacted to Nellie's singing by slowly closing his eyes, which she had decided meant he loved it and was too proud to admit it. But now he lay too still beside the hearth. His breathing grew uneven. The silver arrowhead rested on the table behind her, wrapped in cloth. Nellie did not fully understand the symbol carved into it, but every instinct in her body disliked it. The metal had felt wrong when she touched it, cold in a way ordinary silver never was. Bramble suddenly jerked. Nellie gasped and reached for him. Hey, stay with me." A growl tore from his chest, deeper than before. Not angry, pained. His claws scraped across the wooden floor. Nellie's fear rose fast, but she pushed it down. Fear would not help him. Fear had never stitched a torn coat, warmed a cold hand, or pulled a wounded creature away from death. So she did what she knew. She cared. She dipped the cloth into warm herbal water and pressed it gently against the wound near his shoulder. His whole body stiffened. For one terrifying second, his eyes flashed open, bright silver and wild. Nellie froze. Then she whispered, "It's me. Just clumsy Nellie. Very little threat. Mostly mud and bad decisions." The wolf stared at her. His breathing shook. Slowly, carefully, she rested her palm against his neck. The change was immediate. Bramble inhaled, and the violent tremor in his body eased. His massive head lowered an inch. Nellie felt the heat of him beneath her hand, too hot now, feverish and restless. Beneath the stormy scent of cedar and rain, something bitter burned in his fur. Moonbane. She did not know why the word came to her. She only knew it frightened her. Outside, thunder rolled over Mistbrook. Inside, firelight trembled across the cottage walls. Nellie sat on the floor and eased closer, letting his head rest near her lap. "I don't know what you are," she whispered, "but I know you're hurting." Bramble made a low sound. "I also know you ate my pie." His ear twitched. Nellie smiled through the worry. "Yes, I am bringing that up during your dramatic illness. It is called emotional balance." A faint huff left him. It was small, barely there, but it sounded almost like laughter. Hidden beneath fur, Alden Ravenscar fought a battle no army could see. The poison clawed through his blood, dragging his wolf toward madness. He felt the old rage rising, the instinct to run, bite, destroy, survive. Then Nellie's scent wrapped around him. Warm pear, chamomile, clean cotton, firelight. Her hands stayed steady against him even when his body shook. Her voice continued, soft and stubborn, as if she could hold him together simply by refusing to leave. No crown had ever done that for him. No council, no army, only this Omega, with mud on her hem and courage in her trembling fingers. At some point, exhaustion pulled Nellie down beside him. Her cheek rested near his shoulder, one hand still buried in his fur. "Just before sleep took her," she murmured. "Don't make me drag you back from the creek twice, Bramble. I'm not built for repeat heroics." Alden opened his eyes. For one blurred heartbeat, his body flickered. Not fully wolf. Not fully man. A large hand almost formed beside hers before black fur swallowed it again. Nellie stirred, sensing something. In the silence, one word slipped from the Alpha King's broken control, rough and barely human. "Nellie." Her eyes opened. The fire cracked softly. The wolf lay still beside her. But Nellie sat frozen in the golden dark, her heart pounding. Because no one had told Bramble her name. By the next morning, Nellie Wren had made a decision. She would act normal. This would have been easier if a giant black wolf had not followed her to the village wearing her patched winter blanket like a suspicious royal cloak. "Bramble," she whispered, stopping on the muddy lane, "you cannot come with me." The wolf stopped too. "I am serious." He sat. Unfortunately, because he was enormous, sitting did not make him look obedient. It made him look like a mountain had chosen to wait politely. Nellie pointed toward the cottage. "Home." Bramble stared at her. "Cottage. Still nothing. Fireplace. Pie. Your favorite crime scene." One ear twitched. Nellie sighed. "Do not pretend you do not understand pie." The morning air smelled of wet leaves, chimney smoke, and the warm pear tarts wrapped in cloth inside her basket. Mistbrook Village waited beyond the hill, all crooked roofs, damp cobblestones, and curious windows. Nellie had blankets to return and coins to collect. She also had a wolf, who apparently believed personal space was a myth invented by cowards. She tried walking faster. Bramble walked faster. She stopped. He stopped. She turned around sharply. He looked innocent in a way no creature with silver eyes and claws the size of kitchen knives had any right to look. "You are impossible," she muttered. Behind those calm eyes, King Alden Ravenscar silently accepted the accusation. He had commanded armies, crossed frozen borders, and survived assassins. Yet somehow, this small Omega had reduced him to following a basket of laundry through mud because the thought of letting her out of his sight made his wolf snarl beneath his skin. Also, there were pear tarts. That was not the main reason. Probably. The village noticed them before Nellie reached the square. Mrs. Bellamy dropped a loaf of bread. A boy carrying firewood froze with his mouth open. Old Mr. Tallow stepped backward into a rain barrel and remained there, apparently choosing water over eye contact. Nellie smiled weakly. "Good morning." No one answered. Bramble stood beside her, wrapped in the blanket, his black fur still rough from healing, his silver eyes sweeping over every face. He did not growl. He did not need to. The entire square had already decided breathing too loudly might be unwise. A little girl near the bakery whispered, "Is he yours?" Nellie opened her mouth. Bramble leaned very slightly against her leg. Her cheeks warmed. "He is recovering. Does he bite?" "Only pie," Nellie said before she could stop herself. The little girl giggled. Bramble's ear twitched with wounded dignity. That tiny laugh should have softened the square, but Garrick Vale stepped out from the blacksmith's porch before it could. His coat was dark, his boots clean, and his expression carried the familiar confidence of someone who had never been laughed at by furniture. "Nellie," he said, voice loud enough for everyone to hear, "you brought the beast here." "He followed me." Garrick's mouth curled. "Of course he did. Trouble always follows you." The words landed too easily, too familiarly. Nellie lowered her basket. Bramble's body shifted. A slow, dangerous growl rolled beneath the blanket. Garrick's smile faltered, but pride kept him standing. "That thing should be chained before it hurts someone." "He has hurt no one," Nellie said softly. "Not yet." Bramble stepped forward. The square went silent. For one heartbeat, the blanket slipped from his chest, revealing the pale mark hidden in his black fur. The shape was faint, almost swallowed by shadow, but old Mr. Tallow saw it. His face drained of color. Nellie noticed. So did Garrick. The old man whispered, "That is no stray wolf." Wind moved through the village square, carrying smoke, rain, and fear. Bramble placed himself fully in front of Nellie. Not like a pet, like a king before a throne. And somewhere beyond Mistbrook, royal horns began to sound. The royal horns reached Mistbrook before the royal guards did. 3 long notes rolled over the wet hills, deep enough to shake the bakery windows and send every chicken in the village into a panic. Nellie Wren stood in the square with her basket in one hand, her heart in her throat, and a giant black wolf planted in front of her like a very angry wall. Mrs. Bellamy clutched her bread tray. Royal guards. Old Mr. Tallow crossed himself with trembling fingers. "They are searching for the king." Nellie looked down at Bramble. Bramble looked straight ahead. That was the problem. He did not look confused. He did not look frightened. He looked annoyed, as if an entire royal search party had arrived at an inconvenient time. "Bramble," Nellie whispered, "why do you look personally involved?" His ear twitched. "Oh, do not ear twitch me now." The first riders appeared through the mist, black cloaks moving in the wind, silver armor catching pale morning light. At their front rode Commander Rowan Thorne, a stern man with gray at his temples and a scar across his jaw. He carried the Ravenscar banner, a black crown above silver wings. The moment Bramble saw it, his body went still. Not tense. Commanding, Nellie noticed, and her stomach sank. Commander Rowan dismounted in the square. His gaze passed over the villagers, then stopped on the enormous wolf wrapped in Nellie's patched blanket. For one strange second, his face changed. Recognition almost broke through. Then, Bramble gave the smallest growl. Rowan lowered his eyes. Nellie blinked. A royal commander had just lowered his eyes to her muddy wolf. That seemed unusual. Garrick Vale stepped forward quickly, eager as always to make trouble sound like civic duty. "Commander, this Omega has been hiding a dangerous beast." Nellie stiffened. Bramble's lips lifted just enough to show one white fang. Garrick stepped back. Commander Rowan studied Nellie. "Miss Wren?" "Yes," she said, then immediately added, "I can explain some of this." Not all of it. Possibly very little of it. Someone coughed behind her. It might have been a laugh. Nellie's cheeks warmed. Rowan's eyes softened for half a breath before returning to the wolf. We are searching for His Majesty, King Alden Ravenscar. He vanished after an attack near Elderpine Creek. Nellie felt the world tilt. Elderpine Creek was only a few miles from her cottage. Bramble shifted closer until his shoulder brushed her skirt. Rowan inhaled slowly. The commander's gaze sharpened. Nellie knew that look. Wolves notice scent before truth. And right now, the air around her held chamomile, pear, clean cotton, rain-soaked cedar, and something darkly royal she did not know how to name. Rowan looked from Nellie to Bramble. Where did you find him? By the creek, Nellie said carefully. He was hurt. And you brought him home? He was freezing. Garrick scoffed. She dragged it into her cottage like a lost puppy. Nellie glanced at the massive wolf beside her. In my defense, he was a very large lost puppy. Bramble turned his head slowly toward her. She swallowed. A majestic one. His ear relaxed. A few villagers looked away, hiding smiles. Rowan did not smile. His attention remained on the wolf's chest, where the blanket had slipped again. The faint white crown mark glimmered through the black fur. The commander went pale. Then, so quickly most people missed it, he bent one knee. The square froze. Nellie stopped breathing. Bramble growled low, warning and command braided together. Rowan rose at once, but his voice had changed. Miss Wren, I need to inspect your cottage. No, Nellie said. The answer surprised even her. Rowan paused. Nellie placed herself halfway in front of Bramble, though she knew perfectly well she was about as protective as a teacup before a thunderstorm. He is hurt. He is scared. And every time people crowd him, he gets worse. Bramble's silver eyes softened. Rowan stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Very well, we will come quietly. That was how Nellie found herself walking home with 6 royal guards, 1 smug alpha, 3 curious villagers, and a giant wolf who kept nudging her basket whenever the pear tarts shifted. Stop that, she whispered. Bramble looked innocent. You are under royal investigation. Act serious. He stole 1 tart anyway. By the time they reached the cottage, the rain had begun again, soft and silver across the roof. Rowan stepped inside and stopped. The room smelled of hearth smoke, herbs, clean blankets, and unmistakably, the missing king. His gaze moved toward the sewing room. From beneath the table, Bramble's tail stuck out. Nellie closed her eyes. Rowan looked at her quietly. Miss Wren, he said, what exactly are you hiding? Nellie Wren looked at Commander Rowan Thorne, then at the enormous black tail sticking out from beneath her sewing table. For one fragile second, she considered lying. Unfortunately, the tail moved. A basket of thread rolled across the floor. Nellie sighed. A wolf. Rowan's expression did not change. A wolf. A very private wolf. From beneath the table came a low, offended huff. Nellie glanced down. Do not start. You chose that hiding place. The sewing table wobbled as Bramble shifted beneath it. He was far too large for the space, and one of his ears pressed awkwardly against a basket of lace. For a creature that looked like a midnight storm with teeth, he somehow also looked deeply inconvenienced by furniture. Commander Rowan stared at him in silence. Behind Rowan, Garrick Vale crossed his arms. You see? She admits it. She has been hiding a beast. Nellie's hands tightened around her apron. I have been caring for someone hurt. Someone? Garrick repeated with a sneer. Bramble's growl filled the small cottage. The windows trembled. Garrick immediately found great interest in the ceiling. Rowan raised one hand, stopping the guards behind him. His eyes remained on Bramble, but his voice softened. Miss Wren, no one here wishes to harm him. Bramble's silver eyes flashed from beneath the table. Nellie was not convinced. She moved closer to the wolf, standing between him and the room full of armored men. It was ridiculous, really. She was a small omega in muddy boots, protecting a wolf large enough to flatten her kitchen by sneezing. Still, she stood there. Bramble noticed. So did Rowan. Something like respect passed across the commander's face. We will leave men outside the village, he said carefully, not inside your cottage. Garrick turned. Commander. Rowan's voice sharpened. Enough. The room went still. Nellie blinked. Garrick looked as though someone had slapped him with a wet towel. Rowan bowed his head slightly to Nellie. Keep him warm. Keep him calm. And if his condition changes, send word. Nellie swallowed. Why? Rowan looked toward the wolf one last time. His gaze lingered on the pale mark hidden beneath the edge of the blanket. In quote. Because some creatures are more important than they appear. And then he left. The guards followed. Garrick lingered at the doorway, pride bruised and mouth tight. This is not over, Nellie. Bramble pushed one paw out from under the table. The floorboard cracked. Garrick left faster. When the door finally closed, silence settled over the cottage, broken only by rain tapping against the roof. Nellie turned slowly. Bramble was still under the table. His tail swept once, knocking over another basket. She placed both hands on her hips. You are very bad at being subtle. The wolf crawled out with as much dignity as possible, which was difficult with lace tangled around one ear. Nellie stared. The Alpha King of the Northern Territories stared back. A tiny laugh escaped her before she could stop it. She reached up and gently pulled the lace free. There, terrifying again, but the laughter faded quickly. Her fingers brushed something hard caught deep in the thick fur near his neck. She frowned and carefully parted the black strands. A small silver medallion hung there, half hidden against his chest. It bore the same symbol as the royal banner, a black crown above silver wings. Nellie's breath caught. Bramble did not move. The rain seemed louder suddenly. She stepped back. Who are you? His silver eyes held hers. There was no animal confusion in them, no wild emptiness, only pain, intelligence, and a sorrow so old it made her chest ache. Nellie's voice trembled. You understood them, didn't you? Bramble lowered his head. You understood me this whole time? He did not deny it. Her eyes burned, but not with anger. Not really. The fear came first, then hurt, then something gentler, and far more dangerous. She thought of the fever, the poison, the way he had stood before her in the village, the way he had followed her basket like a stubborn shadow. If you are someone important, she whispered, I am going to be very upset about all the soup bowls I let you lick. One ear twitched. Despite herself, Nellie gave a broken little laugh. Then Bramble stepped forward. Slowly, carefully, the giant wolf lowered himself before her until his great head bowed near her muddy boots. Not like a pet, like a king asking forgiveness. Nellie forgot how to breathe. Lady Seraphine Voss arrived in Mistbrook as if the entire village had been built too close to mud. Her carriage rolled in just after noon, black and silver beneath a sky heavy with rain. 4 royal riders followed behind it, along with 2 councilmen in dark coats who looked uncomfortable with the smell of wet hay, chimney smoke, and ordinary people. Nellie Wren watched from her cottage window with one hand pressed to her stomach. Bramble stood beside her, too large for the window and too silent for comfort. That looks expensive, Nellie whispered, and angry. The wolf's lip curled slightly. Yes, I know. You dislike expensive angry things. You also dislike soup spoons, laundry baskets, and my left boot, so I am trying not to judge too quickly. His silver eyes remained fixed on the carriage. The door opened. Lady Seraphine stepped out in a pale blue traveling dress trimmed with white fur. Her golden hair was pinned perfectly beneath a jeweled hood, and her expression suggested that Mistbrook had personally disappointed her. Nellie looked down at her own apron. There was flour on it, and a suspicious pear-filling stain. She quietly turned the stained side toward the wall. Bramble noticed. His ear twitched. Not one word, she whispered. A knock struck the door before she could hide the pie cooling on the table, the half-folded blankets, or the enormous wolf standing in the middle of the room like a royal secret with paws. Nellie opened the door. Seraphine's perfume entered first, sharp as white roses after frost. Then, her gaze swept over Nellie, the cottage, the uneven curtains, the chipped teacups, and finally Bramble. Her smile did not reach her eyes. So, Seraphine said softly, you are the Omega who found the wolf. Nellie held the door tighter. I found someone hurt. How tender. Bramble's growl rose low behind her. Nellie lifted one hand without looking back. Inside voice, Bramble. One of the councilmen blinked. Seraphine's gaze sharpened. Bramble? Nellie felt her cheeks warm. It was before I knew he might be socially complicated. The wolf slowly turned his head toward her. She cleared her throat, majestically complicated. For half a breath, something almost amused flickered in his eyes. Seraphine stepped inside without being invited. Her boots clicked against the wooden floor. She looked around the cottage with delicate disgust. It smells like laundry and pie. Bramble moved at once. With great seriousness, he nudged the pear pie farther behind Nellie's sewing basket. Nellie closed her eyes. Did that wolf just hide dessert? One councilman whispered. No, Nellie said quickly. Bramble's tail swept once. A spoon fell off the table. Seraphine's face tightened. Enough of this foolishness. The room cooled. Nellie stood straighter, though her heart pounded hard. He is still healing. He belongs to the crown. He belongs to himself. Seraphine stepped closer. You speak boldly for an Omega who washes blankets for coin. The words struck the old bruise inside Nellie, the one shaped by years of laughter, pity, and careless little insults. Her fingers curled into her apron, but she did not lower her eyes. I also mend them, she said quietly. Very useful skill when people keep tearing things apart. Bramble's silver gaze softened. Seraphine did not like that. She reached out and caught Nellie's wrist, not hard enough to bruise, but hard enough to remind everyone in the room who was supposed to matter. Bramble changed. The air snapped with power. He was across the room before anyone breathed, massive body between them, fangs bared, eyes burning like moonlit steel. The cottage walls seemed too small to hold him. The fire bent low in the hearth. Seraphine stumbled back. Nellie touched Bramble's side. No, please. The wolf trembled beneath her palm, fighting himself, fighting the poison, fighting every instinct that demanded he remove the threat from her reach. Slowly, he lowered his head. Only for Nellie. Seraphine saw it. Her gaze dropped to his chest, where the blanket had slipped. The pale mark in his black fur shone clearly now. A crown. Her face went white, then cold. This is royal property, Seraphine said, and she has been hiding it. Nellie's breath caught. He is not property. Seraphine turned to the guards outside. Seize the Omega. Bramble's growl shook the cottage. But Seraphine smiled, cruel and certain. Careful, she whispered. If the beast truly matters to the crown, then harming us will only condemn her faster. Nellie felt Bramble freeze beside her. For the first time, his power could not protect her without endangering her. Two guards stepped forward. Nellie lifted her chin, though her hands shook, and Bramble pressed his body against hers, as if memorizing the place where courage and fear met. The village square had never looked so small to Nellie Wren. Rain misted over the cobblestones, turning the world gray and silver. Villagers crowded beneath awnings and shop signs, whispering behind cold hands. Royal guards stood in a half-circle near the notice board, their black cloaks snapping in the wind. At the center of it all, Nellie stood with muddy hems, trembling fingers, and two guards holding her arms as if she were dangerous. Lady Seraphine Voss looked pleased. That made Nellie more nervous than the guards. This is what happens, Seraphine announced, her voice carrying across the square, when lowborn Omegas forget their place. Nellie swallowed. Behind Seraphine, Garrick Vale smirked. She always was trouble. Cute trouble, maybe, but trouble. Mrs. Bellamy gasped. Garrick Vale, your mother raised you with better manners than that. Garrick blinked. This is a legal matter. It is a rude matter, Mrs. Bellamy snapped. Despite everything, Nellie almost laughed. Almost. Then the chains rattled. Bramble stood several feet away, surrounded by guards. Silver restraints looped loosely around his massive body. They had not dared pull them tight. No one seemed brave enough to test how much strength lived beneath that black fur. His silver eyes had not left Nellie once. Not once. Nellie's heart twisted. Don't, she whispered. His ears lifted. He heard her. Of course he did. Seraphine stepped closer to Nellie and smiled with perfect cruelty. You wrapped a royal creature in a filthy village blanket. You fed it scraps. You named it Bramble. Fine. Wine, eh? A ripple of whispers moved through the crowd. Bramble's expression somehow became colder. Nellie looked at him helplessly. It was a good name at the time. Someone in the crowd coughed, badly hiding a laugh. Even Commander Rowan lowered his eyes, though his mouth twitched. Seraphine's smile vanished. Enough. This Omega will be taken to the capital for questioning. The wolf will be returned to the crown. Nellie's breath caught. The chains tightened. Bramble changed. Not in shape. In presence. Power rolled from him so suddenly that every wolf in the square bowed their heads without meaning to. The rain seemed to pause in the air. The guards, holding Nellie, loosened their grip. Hold him, Seraphine shouted. Bramble lunged. The silver chains snapped. Not broke. Snapped. The sound cracked across Mistbrook like thunder. Guards stumbled back. Villagers screamed. Garrick fell directly into a vegetable cart, which would have been funny if Nellie had not been too busy watching a giant black wolf cross the square like a storm set free. He placed himself in front of her, fangs bared, body shaking. Moonbane still burned through him. She could see it in the tremor of his legs, in the wild brightness of his eyes. He was protecting her, but he was also fighting himself. Nellie stepped forward. "Nellie, no," Mrs. Bellamy cried. But Nellie moved anyway. She pressed both hands into the thick fur at his neck. His body was hot, trembling, dangerous. His growl shook through her palms. "Bramble," she whispered. His eyes flickered. "No," she said, voice breaking. "Alden." The square went silent. Nellie did not know how she knew. She only knew the name had been waiting inside her chest like a key. "Alden," she whispered again. "Come back." The wolf stopped shaking. His silver eyes locked on hers. Then light burst beneath his fur. Black shadow folded into moonlit skin. Claws became hands. The massive wolf form collapsed inward, reshaping itself in a rush of power, rain, and breath. A man knelt before Nellie on the wet cobblestones. Tall, bare-shouldered, scarred, dark-haired, silver-eyed. A torn piece of Nellie's patched blanket still hung across one shoulder. The entire village forgot how to breathe. Commander Rowan dropped to one knee. Then, every royal guard followed. "Your Majesty?" Rowan said. Nellie stared. Her mouth opened, closed. Then, because shock had apparently destroyed all useful thought, she whispered, "You really did lick my soup bowls." King Alden Ravenscar looked up at her. For one heartbeat, the feared Alpha King of the North looked deeply, royally embarrassed. A laugh broke somewhere in the crowd, then another. Alden rose slowly, keeping Nellie behind him with one protective arm. Seraphine went pale. "Your Majesty, I was only..." Silent. One word. The square froze. Alden's voice was rough from poison and power, but every stone seemed to listen. "The next person who calls my mate worthless will answer to the crown." Nellie's breath vanished. "Mate?" Alden turned slightly, his silver eyes softening only for her. "And for the record," he said quietly, "I am not going home without her." For several seconds, Nellie Wren could only stare at the man standing in the rain with her patched blanket over one shoulder. King Alden Ravenscar. The Alpha King, Bramble, her Bramble. The entire village square remained frozen around them. Royal guards knelt in the wet street. Villagers pressed hands over their mouths. Garrick Vale was still sitting in the vegetable cart with a cabbage in his lap, looking as though life had betrayed him personally. Nellie should have curtsied. She should have apologized. She should have said something respectful and appropriate. Instead, she looked at Alden's bare shoulder, then at the muddy piece of blanket hanging from him, and whispered, "That blanket was clean 3 days ago." Alden blinked. Commander Rowan made a sound dangerously close to a cough. For the first time since revealing himself, the feared Alpha King looked at a complete loss. "I will replace it," he said. Nellie's eyes widened. "That is not the point. You were wearing it while secretly being royalty." Alden glanced down at the blanket as if it had become politically complicated. "It was warm," he said. Someone in the crowd laughed. Then another. The tension cracked softly, not enough to erase what had happened, but enough to let people breathe again. Lady Seraphine did not laugh. Her face had gone pale beneath her perfect powder. "Your Majesty," she said carefully, "this Omega deceived the crown. She kept you hidden." Alden turned. The rain seemed colder. "No," he said, "she saved me." Seraphine lowered her gaze, but her voice remained sharp. "She is not fit to stand beside you." Nellie's heart dropped. There it was. The old truth everyone had always handed her. Too clumsy, too soft, too ordinary, too little for anything grand. She stepped back without meaning to. Alden felt it instantly. His hand reached for hers, but he did not grab. He waited. That hurt more, somehow. The choice, the gentleness. Nellie looked at his hand, then at the king before her. "I thought you were just a wolf." "I know. I named you Bramble. I remember. I told you not to steal pie. You were right to do so." Her lips trembled. "I let you sleep by my fire because I thought nobody else was coming for you." Alden's silver eyes softened, "And I stayed because nobody had ever made me feel less alone." The square went quiet. Nellie looked down, blinking hard. Rain clung to her lashes. "I am not a Luna from a noble house. No. I trip over buckets." I noticed. A small laugh escaped her. Alden's mouth almost curved. Repeatedly. That was unnecessary. It was memorable. Her laugh broke again, warmer this time, though tears still filled her eyes. Then Alden stepped closer and lowered his voice so only she could hear. "Nellie Wren, I had palaces, armies, crowns. None of them brought me back from the dark. You did." She stopped breathing. He touched the edge of the patched blanket. This was the first thing in years that smelled like home. The mate bond moved between them, warm and steady, not a chain, but a hearth. Nellie felt his pain, his loneliness, his fear of losing control, and beneath it all, she felt his certainty. He had chosen her, not because she was perfect, because she was kind when no one was watching. Nellie lifted her chin and turned towards Seraphine, Garrick, the councilman, and every villager who had ever smiled too gently at her mistakes. "My name is Nellie Wren," she said. Her voice shook, but it did not break. "I am clumsy. I mend blankets. I burn toast when nervous. And I am done apologizing for being someone small enough to notice when powerful people are hurting." Alden's eyes shone. Mrs. Bellamy began crying loudly into a loaf of bread. From the vegetable cart, Garrick muttered, "This feels excessive." Mrs. Bellamy threw the loaf at him. Later, when the royal carriage came to take Alden back to the capital, he did not step inside first. He waited for Nellie. She looked at the palace crest, then at her muddy boots. "I might stain the seats." Alden offered his hand. "Then they will survive." Weeks later, Ravenscar Palace gained silk curtains, silver banners, and one very nervous Omega who still apologized to door frames. But in the Alpha King's private chamber, on the finest chair in the kingdom, lay one patched winter blanket that smelled faintly of pear, chamomile, clean cotton, and firelight. No servant dared move it. And every night, when the crown grew heavy, Alden returned to that room, rested his head in Nellie's lap, and listened as she whispered with a smile, "You still know where home is." He always did. So, this is where Nellie and Alden's story gently closes. Are you still here with me? Because if you are, maybe this story stayed with you for a reason. Not just because of the wolf, the blanket, or the little moments that made us smile. Maybe it stayed because Nellie reminded us of something real. Being misunderstood can make a person quiet. Being betrayed can make a heart careful. And pain, when it is deep enough, does not always scream. It just teaches someone to stand a little straighter, speak a little less, and stop begging to be seen by people who already decided not to look. Nellie did not become worthy because a king chose her. She was already worthy when she chose kindness without needing applause. She protected her dignity, even with muddy boots and a nervous heart. And that matters. Life will not always give us a crown. Most days, it just gives us a choice. Lose ourselves for approval, or choose ourselves, with peace. If this touched your heart, comment one word, dignity. And if you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe. It truly helps more than you know.